So yeah, before we share this quick video, I just want to show you quickly. This is very, very important. Just want to show you this quick excerpt by David K. Bernard, because we're bringing receipts here with Brother Curtis. We're not just, parroting stuff that we've heard. We're actually going to the sources themselves. So here's the book. Hopefully we can see it on the screen. Yes, we are. Okay, so this is on page. Just bear with me, folks. So this is, I think, on page of the Oneness of God. And just so you know, brothers and sisters. So yeah, I'll show you the book in question. So this is very interesting. David K. Bernard from the UPCI, Oneness Pentecostal Group, he says in this section, others believe that Jesus had a complete human nature. That's Apollinarianism, okay? That is, Jesus had a human body, but instead of a human spirit, do you see that? Like he's already showing that's negative when you don't believe that. He had only the Spirit of God dwelling in him. Other ways to state this belief are that Jesus was a human body animated solely by the Spirit of God, or that Jesus did not have a human mind, but only the divine mind, the Logos. I agree with this position, brother. What do you want? Do you want to comment? I agree with it, brother, because this is what the scriptures teach. The Spirit of Jesus, the Spirit of Christ, is identified as the Spirit of God in Romans 8. And we also have other scriptures that I will provide that shows that there is only one Spirit. So why the negative emphasis on people who believe that it was the Spirit of the Father, the Spirit of God animating? Do you want to comment on that? It's like he's framing it like this is a negative view.
He is framing it like it's a negative view. Now, I don't believe that there's any evidence in Scripture that Jesus, God manifest in the flesh, had any kind of a human spirit. Only the Spirit of God was in that body of flesh, and that is God. Okay, God is spirit. Right. In John 4:26, 4:27 talks about God is spirit. So now having a human mind, I can barely see it here. Let's see.
Yes, human mind. Yep.
Okay. Is a human body animated solely by the Spirit of God, and that Jesus did not have a human mind, but only the divine mind, the Logos. Okay.
Right.
The divine mind would be the divine mind of the Spirit, which is God. So I agree with that.
I do, because he says that, I do not do my own will, but the will of the Father. What is the will of the Father? It's the mind of the Father. So if Jesus is saying that he's doing the will of the human mind, the being is divided at that point. And we know that God's being, was united to that flesh. So that flesh didn't have a self-conscious mind. That would be problematic. Do you see where I'm going?
I think it would be. Yes. I think Jesus would have the same limitation. God manifest in the flesh would have the same limitations that we do as fleshly humans. Right. And there's no way, because there's no way that the Spirit of God would be able to sin. He'd be denying himself, for one. There's no way. And so I don't believe that body of flesh had a human spirit. It had he took on a human nature, because we know the nature of God is spirit first and foremost, and has always been spirit, and he is spirit. But he took on a human nature. The nature of God is spirit, but he took on the human nature, the spirit revealed inside that body of flesh, doing all the works, because the flesh done nothing. It was the
No,
spirit
and Jesus,
animating that
yeah,
body.
yes, and Jesus says this time and time again in the Gospels. And
Hmm.
what's fascinating is when Jesus says, "Not my will," he's talking about the will that he could have succumbed to, which is the will of the
Yep.
flesh. But when he's
Yep.
talking about that, he's not saying that there is a separate mind. He's saying my
Right.
mind, which is ultimately the mind of God,
Hmm.
could have succumbed if I desired to, but I don't. I
Yep.
desire to do the will that has always been existing with me, right? And that's the will of
Hmm.
God. My will is the will to do the will of God. And that to me makes so much sense, brother, because
Hmm.
this is where I have issue with this is when he says the truth lies somewhere in between these historical views expressed by various theologians. This is David K. Bernard saying this in his book in
Yeah.
1956. So we're going to see
Hmm.
another video with Brother Curtis where he actually says the Father is not the Son. Jesus had a complete human nature and the complete divine nature. Notice the word complete. This is where it gets tricky. At the same time is the teaching of Scripture, but we cannot separate these two natures in his earthly life. And I would agree to a certain extent. It is
Hmm.
apparent that Jesus was human. Look what he says. Jesus was human in will. What? What? In
No, I
will?
do the will of my Father. No,
Right.
he does the will of his
That's
Father. He doesn't do his
brother.
own will in the flesh,
When I saw
fleshly
that,
will.
I was like,
There's no fleshly
that's
will. No.
no. He says it is apparent that he had a human will, mind. Look at that, brother. Mind, will, mind,
Mm,
spirit,
spirit? No.
soul,
No.
and body. And that,
Hmm.
brother, I'm sorry, and then I'll just finish with this, but it is equally apparent that he had the fullness of the Godhead resident in his flesh. That's two wills. That's two spirits,
Ah,
folks.
yeah.
You,
Yes.
I'm sorry, you. I hate to break your bubble. For some of you that have been listening to David K. Bernard for years, but we have to be honest. And just so you know, this is the book that I'm quoting. Just going to show it to the
I,
audience, brother, before we play that video, and then we're going to open
that's the
the
first
open
I've
mic.
ever read that, brother. That's the first I've ever seen that before. That book,
I know, brother. Yeah,
that
I know.
excerpt.
I when
So
I saw that the first
that's
time,
shocking to me.
I know,
That shocks me.
I know. I know
Um,
this is why I
hmm,
had to share this. I really had to, organize this open mic, brothers, because it's important.
um,
It's this is the book. This is the book, brothers and
okay.
sisters. You have it there
I've
on the
seen it
screen.
before.
The
Yeah.
Oneness of God, David K. Bernard, Volume 1. I have it. And this is what he says. It's concerning because you're basically saying there is a human mind, a human will coexisting with the will of God. That means God created a human mind in that body. God created a human will to suffer with the divine on the cross. You're no different than the Trinitarians at that point. You're even going
Hmm.
to even further in a heretical, arena that to me it's just blasphemy, brother, to say that there is a
Well,
human mind, a human life living with God the Father
well,
in that body. Yeah. So, anyways, just wanted
there's such a thing called dualism. There's an ism called dualism. Okay, I
right,
wrote it down. It says dualism. There's a belief of dualism that means two separate substances like mind and body, or matter
right,
and spirit. It's like a mental and physical and distinct entities. Like there's a difference in entities. That's kind
right.
of leaning towards dualism, if you want to say. I would say that. So
Yep.
that's kind of very, very concerning to me, that
Right.
he would
It
have
is.
that. idea.
Because you can be the same being, brothers and sisters, right, Brother Curtis? I have the same will, but I can choose to perform that will either in sinning or submitting that same will, one will, to God.
Yeah.
That's the point, and God was so fused with that flesh that there was no division. Like the flesh was not saying, hey, God, I'm thinking for myself, and then God was saying, no, you're not, you need to submit to my will. That's what I'm trying to convey tonight with Brother Curtis, and we're against that. That's Nestorianism. Two persons, two individuals, two spirits within Jesus, and that's problematic.
That's what
I'm sorry, we've read the sources. It sounds very much, it's actually quite literal. David K. Bernard is actually agreeing with Nestorianism in that section, in that excerpt that I've just shared.
Yep.
So do you want to say something before we play the video, brother?
Like I said in the beginning, I mean, Dr. Bernard has always emphasized strongly on John 14, where Jesus is the Father. So how could he hold to that position and literally believe what Jesus said, and then write something like that to where he doesn't that he believes that that the Father is not the Son, and the Son, I mean, he would believe the Son has to be the Father, so how can the Father not be the Son? That doesn't make any sense to me. So,
before
that God, he believed, he holds to 1 Timothy 3:16, God manifested in flesh. He emphasizes that all the time.
Beautifully, and I agree with that. But when I saw that, I was like, oh no. It was like, everything, the exalted high Christology that he presented, I'm sorry, but it comes just tumbling down when you make a statement saying Jesus had a human mind, a human will, a human spirit. Now Christ is divided. Brothers, Christ is divided in that model.
We have a human mind, a human will, and a human spirit that we're fighting against all the time, our flesh.
Yeah.
God showed us by example. He led by example by manifesting into a body of flesh. He's spirit. And he showed us by example that we have our own human spirit, human will, human nature. But if his spirit is in us and we walk in that spirit, we will not carry out the desires of the flesh, and we'll be walking in the will of the Father. So that was the ultimate example. So I cannot believe that that body of flesh that God manifested into literally had a human spirit in that body. There's no way, because that's I can't.
Absolutely.